And now comes question 4, Tim, and this is the one that I've spent so much time researching. I was like, this is not easy trying to figure out how to go down and go. So I'm really curious to actually hear what you said about this one because I have my own thoughts and feelings on here. And apologies to everyone before I read this question because there's a lot of names on here. I'm going to try to shorten them because I am the worst when it comes to pronouncing names. So I'm just going to horrifically butcher everyone's name. So
I'm going to speak for Luke and say they'll probably be in the show notes.
Yes, they will. 100%. I'm not going to attempt all of these names. Okay, here is the question. It says, "Hey, Luke, I saw your post about wanting questions for your podcast, and I've got one. I'm working on a project looking at effective design for online discussion boards at the graduate level and came across a different measurement scale, interaction analysis model, or short, it is IAM. Have you ever heard of it? So far, I found 2 papers that refer to it: Constructing Student Knowledge in the Online Classroom, The Effectiveness of Focal Prompts, and The Effect of Structured Divergent Prompts on Knowledge Construction. The authors in both papers make the point that using Bloom's taxonomy as a measurement scale isn't as reliable as the IAM scale. Do you have any experiences with the IAM scale? Is it really more reliable than Bloom's at determining and measuring critical thought level of student posts?" So, Tim, this one's wild. This one is like really diving into the instructional design world where I saw that. The first thing I actually thought about was this, like, wow, this is so awesome that someone has the opportunity to really go down this rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was the first thing where I was just like, this means that the institution or the organization like really believes in doing the best. They care. They want the latest and greatest. So this actually made me really happy as far as for that goes. Mm-hmm. Then came the pain of trying to figure out how to answer this. So I'm not. Do you want to take this one first, or would you like me to give this thing a spin?
Sure. Yeah. So the IAM is there's some loaded questions there and some interesting concepts. The short answer is no. I've never heard of it before. I've never used it, but I love digging into these articles, and then you also supplied a third article, which I thought was a great way of gave a good framework of it. So I'm hoping that'll be in the notes too.
Absolutely.
But the more I process this, and again, this is me looking into this for the first time, so completely new perspective. But the more I process this, it's almost to me an apples and oranges kind of comparison when you're talking about Bloom's versus this framework. What the IAM is intended to do, from what I could tell, it's a tool for measuring the level of interaction in an online environment. Okay, so it's specifically about measuring the interaction itself, the depth of the interaction, the quality of the interaction, and it provides these 5 levels of interaction. Level 1, sharing and comparing. Level 2, dissonance. Level 3, negotiation and co-construction. Level 4, testing, tentative constructions. And level 5, statement and application of newly constructed knowledge. And I really liked this idea because always I've talked with colleagues before about improving discussion boards. We're always trying to get past that third step of here's my thought, and then someone says, yeah, that's nice, or no, you're wrong. Or how do you get to that third level of let's start now trying to get to this level, negotiation and co-construction. So this fell right in line with my experience about discussion boards and my desire to get discussions better. And so I really, really like this framework. I'm gonna be using this more for sure. But it is specifically a framework for analyzing the depth of those interactions, not the content behind it. And my thought was, I could read 10 papers, synthesize and analyze the content there, come up with a brand new learning theory. And if I state that on a discussion board, that's a level 1 interaction. So I've done, the tippy top of Bloom's, construction, analysis, creation, but that's still just a level 1 IAM interaction. Until someone comes in and says, I don't think that's right. Have you thought about it this way? Okay, that's a level 2 interaction. Then when I say, okay, here's what I really meant, or, I hadn't thought about it that way, maybe it's this. Now we're getting to negotiation and co-construction, which is a level 3 interaction. So it's a different thing. It's there to measure the quality of the tool you're using, really, the quality of that discussion itself.
And going off of that, it's also tricky to really know what people actually mean and say and do within a discussion board section, because it's from the outside looking in, because I know I read a bunch of different papers around this too that was talking about literally like downloading the transcripts of the course and analyzing that. And it's just like, well, like, how much did you really understand because you're the outsider looking in? Like, if you had the conversation with the person, you may have perceived and interpreted things differently compared to the instructor, compared to another student. So to me, there's a lot of wiggle room where, once again, I love the idea. Like, I think it's great for us to be able to say, hey, we can make these things better. Let's talk about these different types of phases and really try to see how can we make a richer, fuller, more meaningful conversation in a discussion board. That's awesome. So, like, I really do like this, even though I'm kind of like poo-pooing it, but like, I really love the idea of things. But the other big thing to me that I kept on thinking about, because I've taken online courses for forever. I've taught graduate courses for years too. And what I know is that if I really was going to say, like, I'm doing this research, I want to make sure I'm going to dive on into everything and whatnot, I really need to understand the student's perception about discussion boards specifically for that course, that institution, and same thing with the professor's perceptions about discussion boards, because we've all been there where people go into a discussion board and they're like, all right, cool, this is 2% of my grade, I need 2 paragraphs, you got it. And they just start typing away because it's not weighted to say this is half your grade. So they're going to spend more of their time doing the full-blown assignments and essays and projects and whatnot and so forth, because that's natural to do. Because if you bomb all the discussion boards and you still get a 90% of a class, whatever, you know,
where's my motivation?
Right. Exactly. So that level of motivation has to be there. And of course you have grad students, which is great. I think grad students are the right pilot to do this, because typically other adults care about this communication, the connectivism, like they should be caring about the discussion. So I think it's a really good way for us to be able to pilot, see how it goes, find the right instructors as well too, who really would be able to support this and partner with the instructional designers, because once again, I've taught grad courses and I am confident in telling you that if I am trying to go and do my announcements, do my grading, and then on top of that, try to contribute to half the discussion board posts per week, I'm looking at 30 hours a week. Like, and if that's what you're trying to be able to say is like, we want richer conversations, really do this, really do that. It's like, I get it, but we also need to think about the realistic perspective is that if these are adjunct instructors, if they're making $2,200, $2,500 for a 10-week course, really, like, are they going to say, like, I'd love to spend more time and have like a deeper conversation of a discussion board? Like, I don't know. So I think it's more about perceptions and reality than it is as much about like, hey, this sounds great, but we need the right circumstances to really test it out.
Right.
Does that make sense?
We need to provide our students the right circumstances as well. I think one of the biggest issues that this brought up for me was we don't ever give our students enough time to get past. If we can get to that third level, that's amazing. We don't give them enough time because too often we treat a discussion board as an assignment, a task that has a certain amount of time, like it's week 2 discussion board, or it's the discussion board for chapter 9, you know, and as soon as we move on to chapter 10, the chapter 9 discussion board is irrelevant anymore. And it really made me think about, you know, maybe it would be fun to try a model where the discussion board lasted all the term, right? So that you could get past level 2, level 3, and maybe discussion boards are just for topics, and throughout the course, those topics can continue to develop and mature. And now that I have like an actual tangible framework that I can print out and staple onto my board and look at all day, you know, that sets that goal of I'd really like to see a student get to, or a class get to level 5 interactions on a discussion board. That would be amazing, but that's going to take time. That's going to take 2-3 weeks. Because it's really about those cycles. When we have people in a room together, the amount of cycles that happen, communication cycles that happen, are huge. I mean, even in this conversation, we've had maybe 100 or more back and forth cycles of ideas and questions and things like that. In a discussion board, that would take a month to have that equivalent conversation. And we just don't give our students that amount of time.
No, because they need that time to also build those relationships too. Like they don't know each other yet. So when I think about like, oh, like, are you hitting the negotiation stage? Well, I was like, well, if I don't know this person at all, no, I'm not. No, that's
I don't
not
know.
appealing to
Are
me.
they going to take it wrong, or
right? Yeah. Am I going to get a complaint against me because I'm debating against this person and now we're fighting, quote unquote, in a discussion board and it's really weird and awkward and tense? Like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, but of course it's just like, oh no, I've known this person now for 8 weeks and we've had a bunch of calls together. We've gone through things together. Then like, yeah, I'm not afraid to push back because I will respectfully do so. And they know me, they know my style. It's not going to catch someone by surprise, which also makes me think too entirely about like, is a discussion board enough? Because I don't think so. If I really wanted to do this model, it would be like, yeah, we're going to have a discussion board, but also we're going to do weekly workshops or trainings or webinars or something where we're going to be coming together as a group and working together, either in person, Zoom, Gather Town, whatever, something video-ish platform.
Yeah, or how do you get one discussion board to bleed into the next so that it instead of starting over each week, it can somehow evolve. And that's one of the things I like. Some of this platforms like Yellow Dig or Packback that kind of allow for, Yellow Dig especially is modeled after Facebook. It's one board that students interact with each week throughout the term. And so it could allow students to continue a thread that started in week 1 throughout, if they're engaged in that topic or engaged in that thread. The other thing that stood out to me too was this idea of dissonance being an advanced form of communication that we hear a lot about, the algorithms in our social media that funnel us toward people that agree with us, right? That's typically the idea in YouTube or in Facebook or things like that, is that we are funneled toward places that we will agree and engage, because engagement's the key there, right? And this idea of dissonance is an interesting one. And I know that there's one platform, I think it's Ment.io, that is using AI in their discussion board platform specifically to create some dissonance. Like their AI will try to, I don't know exactly how it works. I saw a demo one time. I haven't used it myself, but we'll try to put in front of you posts or comments that might seem not in alignment with your own.
Interesting.
So that instead of funneling you towards agreement, it kind of funnels you toward disagreement or toward this area of dissonance to get you to that next level. So I thought that was an interesting use of AI within a discussion board. I'm really intrigued by how some of these companies are starting to use AI in their discussion board platforms.
Oh yeah, 100%. If someone can actually do that, and I'm literally like looking at this like right now on the side, so that's interesting. I'm going to dive into that, and I'll link that into the show notes as well. The other thing that this completely reminds me of too is, did you ever take a debate class before in college?
I never did.
So I've taken a few, and I'm confident in telling you that like week 1 is really weird because you're like, I don't know these people, whatever. And then, of course, like the first class I had, it was we went through all the typical debates that you would think about. And of course, the professor would say like, what side are you on, A or B? And then like whatever hand that you raised up for, he was like, awesome, you're on the opposite side. Congrats. Like, go fight with yourself. And you're like,
right.
Cool. Now I have to see the other perspective and debate myself and try to convince other people. And I remember one of the ones that we were talking about was something like lowering the drinking age to like 18 is like what I had. And I was all like the opposite. I was like, no, we shouldn't lower the drinking age. And of course they were like, congrats, you're on the other side. And I was like, okay, here we go. And that really had a deeper conversation because I was debating with my fellow classmates about these things. And, and some people were vulnerable and open about different things, about how like these different forms of substances like affected their lives or their loved ones or whatnot. And so like it created this huge thing where I was like, whoa, like I thought I thought this is a surface level debate. We're not going anywhere. And then all of a sudden, all these stories came about and these emotions, and it was like, oh, okay. So, but of course, once again, that was over a period of time. It was assigning you a belief, and you had to go against one thing. So it's like, I can see this working, but it needs the time. It needs that continuation that you've been talking about, the platform, the trust. It needs a lot to be able to do it. But once again, I love the idea. It just, you really need a lot of the right circumstances. But I think it's cool. I think it's worthy of testing for sure.
Yeah. The other thing I like about this, you probably heard the phrase that which gets measured improves, right? Just the act of measuring something, or being consciously aware, or being able to put a number to something changes the way we approach it. I think that just more awareness of this framework would have that kind of effect. Now that I can look and point to, like I said, a framework of interactions, it kind of gives me a goal to work toward, and it makes it a little more concrete. So I'm really appreciative of whoever asked this question. Thank you. I learned a lot, and it's made me think about the discussion boards a little bit different. But I really do think, to wrap it up, it is kind of apples and oranges. Blooms, we often throw out the word blooms and we leave off all the rest of the words, right? Bloom's taxonomy of learning is really about putting a framework or a way to measure an individual's learning, right? And this is not that. This is measuring the depth of an interaction. So Two different things, kind of related. I'm not sure why those articles would try to pair them against each other when they're just different tools for different purposes.
Yeah, that great point. That was something I found interesting too. I was like, why the need of comparison? Like, because it's plenty great on its own. Why are we trying to bring down other people? That's, it's kind of like how you're reading about an instructional design model, and then you're like, cool, like I love using backward design. This works for me. And then someone's going to come in here and then just like kick down the door and be like, have you heard of SAM? And you're like, yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. Like, it's fine. Like, what's the problem here? Like, why do we need to fight about it? It's anyway, but that's a different story for a different day. Tim, this was awesome, man. This was fun.
This is great.
Yeah, I absolutely love doing this. I would hope that you would come back in the future to do more Q&A episodes, because this was really cool. I learned a lot, not just from hearing from you, but once again, that last question, I was reading like journal after journal article going through things where I was like, where is this going to stop? Like, it's like going back in grad school trying to learn all these things new. It was fun, man. It was really cool. I had a great time. Tim, the final question I have for you is, where can folks go to find you, connect with you, see what you do? Where do you want them to be able to connect with you?
Oh, timothymckeen.com is my name, and my website for audiobook and e-learning samples there. Also have a channel on YouTube. Don't post there too often anymore, but find me on your Facebook group and around. Everything is just based on my name, so look up Timothy McKeen and you'll find it.
Awesome. I'll put all that stuff in the show notes so they can easily access it. But Tim, hey, once again, thanks for coming on the show. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.